everyone has had pits this year. If you haven't, then I don't know. You either sold your soul to the devil, or you're sitting on the hand of Jesus. This is the loud, quiet, living the empty nest.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Loud Quiet, episode 67, and the first one that will be released in 2025. We're recording it here at the tail end of 24, but kicking off a new calendar year, which is always an exciting time. It's also kind of a nice time to, oddly enough, to get out of the holidays. As much as we anticipated, it's kind of nice to, okay, get back to that normal world.
Yeah, and it's been, it's been a fun holiday season having the kids home, and
Yeah.
it was a little more stressful for me this year just because I'm also trying to recover from surgery,
Yeah.
and I lost it a couple of times. But just because my energy level is still, it's getting there, but it's still not, because I still can't
Yeah.
do my workout. So I did snap a couple of times because I was tired.
But and while that is true, that certainly wasn't the focus. You did a lot, and I think a lot of folks might say, "Oh, planning that big of a surgery during the holidays when you are in charge of a good portion of that holidays could be
Yeah,
something to think
but
about."
it was also, I knew we weren't traveling. I knew we
Yeah,
weren't doing anything. I tried to be as prepared as I could beforehand, which I was,
yeah,
but hosting and that kind of thing adds a different element to it. But I wouldn't have changed anything
no,
because the weather was gross. So,
yeah. What a great time to
yeah,
hunker
because,
down.
so, anyways.
But we're
But yeah,
back.
so we thought we would do a little year end recap of peaks, pits, and pivots. Just, we saw an article this week from a couple that we follow, and they're a relationship love couple, and
Why can I not think of their names right now?
Les and Leslie,
There it is. Say
yeah,
it. Yeah.
Les and Leslie Johnson.
Oh boy.
I don't know their last name. Sorry, Les and Leslie is how I know
Guess what
them.
we're
But
going to do
anyway,
though? It'll be in the
yeah,
links to. What I'll do is I'll link that specific blog. I would recommend. It's a good
yeah,
follow. It's not just empty stage.
no,
They even talk about pre-marriage and stuff like
oh
that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
they're a good
yeah.
follow for relationship.
And yeah, their majority I think would be more focused
Yeah,
on young couples.
yeah,
But
I agree.
anyways, they put out an article about just having gratitude. We know that the year, not everything can go as planned. If you have a year like that, then amazing for you. But so just we just thought that we'd do a little highs and lows and how we
Yeah, because
navigated
in the
things.
article, the way they talked about it was, I think the premise of it was if holidays have you stressed out, and we extrapolate it beyond that, just if life or whatever. There's sort of three things that they had focused on, and one was celebrate your victories, remember your victories, because when you're in the thick of it, sometimes you can forget that. And then the second part, because that can oftentimes it stops there. The second part was what were your lessons learned and where did you learn from that? And then the third was more focused just on loving each other and taking that into let's look back because this year was an incredibly full year when I think about it, when we stop down and think about it. And so, yeah, there were those peaks, the victories, there were those pits from which we have lessons learned. And there were pivots that came out of all of the above.
Yeah, and it was a roller coaster of a year for sure. I think we said this in when we did our last year's mini resolutions. What do we call it? Mini micro
Micro improvement,
enhancements or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So go back and check out that episode.
This the slogan that I had heard for 24 was "Do more in 24." Now I don't know what 25 is. Maybe it's just gonna be "Stay alive in 25." I don't know, but
Oh my gosh.
anyway,
You know what I'm
so
hearing? So I don't know the theme, but one of the people that I follow in the content creation space, Jay Klaus, and I'm not going to get his phrasing right, but he talks about it's actually the reverse. Do less, but do it with intensity. Like do focus on the things that matter and give it all. I think he said only do things full-assed. If there's anything you're trying to do half-assed, stop. Only do, and so it was more pull back from the list and go all in on it.
well, and I didn't see it as a list. I saw it as, and that was one of my micro enhancements was to say yes more
Yeah.
last year, and we'll get into that. But so anyway, so we just thought that we'd do a little highlight reel of things that happened this year. And you brought up the point the other day when the kids were home, everybody was home, it was nice. And you were like, I can't believe this year was.
The year that Tegan moved from her toxic roommate, and those that have been following this episode have stuck with us. You've stuck with us through that episode, that experience that we had with Tegan. It was in January of 20.
February. It was February. She didn't get to
I guess
move.
we
Yeah.
were working through it. It was starting
Yeah.
in January and February of 24 that she moved, and it feels like another life ago.
Yeah,
And what a victory that
well,
was.
and because she started the process in 23.
Well, sure, yeah.
And so, it took a while, but yes, thank goodness that got done. And in that, she had already set up her housing for the year that she's in now. Great situation. Everything is going great. They've already signed their lease for next year, all
What
four of them.
a
Yes.
peak that is.
We
The
don't have
fact
to
that we don't
move
have to
someone
think about
again.
it. No
Yeah.
moves. We can keep her stuff in the apartment. So yeah,
Yeah.
almost
Very nice.
that moment in February changed it to where things got stable from a residential
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
It was nice.
That was nice. So you brought up that happened this year. Tanner also, obviously found out. I don't think it was till April, or it was late.
We have to go back and look at
Yeah, I
episodes.
don't know, but that he got into SMU Law School, which has been a great experience so far. I mean,
Even
he's
beyond
just,
what we expected.
yeah, he's
right?
just loving it and loving the friends that he's made, the contacts that he's already gotten,
No
the
kidding.
connections
The
are
relationships.
crazy.
Yeah, it's not that we're here to advertise SMU Law School, but I will tell you, it's a good one if you got ones that are considering it. Because
Yes.
my gosh,
Yeah.
especially if you're planning to be in the Dallas area.
I have the list, so I'm just kind of going down because we did this actually last night. And here's another bonus: having your child that lives in an apartment down in Dallas. The Tegan and her friend Noe, they were going to the Sonic Symphony, which is a huge. If you're into video games and especially Sonic, this is a traveling tour. This was the last one of 2024. They bought these tickets back in the summer, and so we drove them. Tegan could have driven down there, but we're like, we'll drive y'all down there. We'll go eat, and then we asked Tanner, hey, can we? Because he's gone. Can we just hang out at your apartment? He's like, sure. So yes, that was so
nice to have
nice,
that.
and again,
And there's a peak right
reinforced.
there. It's not our peak.
I
but
know.
the fact that they got into that where it was completely sold out. And if you're familiar with the
Mm-hmm.
Winsboro Opera House, every seat sold out, and there weren't tickets on the secondary market, which was weird. So all excitement all around.
Yes,
Just fun.
And again, it reinforced why I want to move down there, but that's another point.
Hey, what did we do though? We did wander and look at some of the
Yeah.
houses. Now, here's a side tip. Don't go looking at real estate at night. It's hard to tell, but
Yeah.
it did because we knew the neighborhood. So started to look.
So the first ones are very kid focused, just because that's what we were talking, things that had happened to them. Tanner had 3 graduations. We had an awesome week. We actually were talking about that week a couple of weeks ago. It had nothing to do with, but we were just like, that was just a really
Well, it's because I miss
fun
it.
week.
I miss Scottsdale, Phoenix, Tempe, all of that. That was part of it. And I guarantee part of it's the weather was so crappy here
Yeah.
that the thought was, oh my gosh, I miss it out there. And we started to think back. And that was, we had that great dinner sitting outside with all of his roommates and their families. We got
Did the
that
pub
great
crawl.
The
I
pub
mean,
crawl,
yeah.
which, okay, that was a lot of fun. It took a couple years of our life away from us.
Not me, but yes.
Well,
I was
were
not
all
partaking.
exhausted.
We were tired, but
I'm
yeah.
not even talking about the booze,
Yeah.
just the exhaustion and the
Yeah.
people and the noise. But that was one of the more fun weeks that I've gotten to experience, both as just a traveler and as a parent. That graduation week was
Yeah,
spectacular.
it was. You and Tegan did a road trip.
Yeah, and I've talked about that on here, but the road trip, you never know what it's going to be like to be locked away in a car with your kid for 16 hours. And it's not that we planned any of this, but it's amazing what you get to learn about your kid, about each other, and just kind of experiencing life together. One thing is I got to see that Tegan is an absolutely confident and competent driver on highways out in West Texas and through cities and all of that. We even had the little icon, the picture that I think you sent me or maybe Tanner did, but it had the little race car showing that Tegan was going over the
Oh,
speed limit confidently out there in West Texas. And so that was fun. Carlsbad Caverns was absolutely spectacular. Road trips are a really good idea with the adult kid, and especially one-on-ones.
yeah. And y'all, just did it again to bring her back because she needed her car and everything went
Everything
good.
went well. Pecos, Texas, not as exciting as Carlsbad Caverns. We did, however, get to enjoy some good food along
Yes.
the way, which you always do.
I'm skipping a couple because we're going to talk about them. And we've already focused on our kids. They're doing awesome in school. I'll brag on Tegan. She, is maintaining her 4.0.
Yeah.
That child is doing really well. And she said the other day, she said, college just works for me. She likes the way that it's structured. She's not a procrastinator, which helps. So, they're both just doing great. We got to do some fun traveling. We went to New York City. We went to New Orleans. We went to Mexico. We did the fly out real quick for her birthday, which is super special, and I know that'll be a core memory that she'll have
Yeah.
forever.
And that was featured. I'm not going to know the
Oh
number, but
yeah,
it's
cakes
Cakes
on a
on a
plane.
Plane. Cakes on a Plane is the episode, and there's some footage there of Clancy actually baking her number cake and taking it on the plane. And well, we didn't record this, but my gosh, you got celebrated in a lot of the airports.
And you know, we're really enjoying seeing the travel bug hit Tanner
Yeah.
now that he can do, and Tegan wants to too. She just needs to find a group that is willing to do it. But he's had some great trips. He's actually right now in Phoenix, headed to San Diego for a huge, a lot of his revolve around music
Right.
festivals. He's big into music, and
Seeing
so
them
it's
get that
nice.
travel and that's something that I really like seeing in our kids. And that's, as empty nesters, obviously we have our life, we also have our adult kids. We want to see our kids embrace values that we value. And one of the values that we have is stuff isn't nearly as important to us as experiences. And I think if what do they always say? Look at your checkbook and see, that'll tell you where your real values are. We open up the checkbook on experiences pretty freely, and stuff tends not to be as much of a focus. And watching
I
Tanner,
like stuff, but okay, I like both. I'm not gonna.
what I'm
I
seeing
like
though,
things too.
what, that'll be the next list that I give you is I like things. Watching him though be willing to spend and prioritize, he has worked, he has saved, and choosing to prioritize spending on experiences is something that and travel experiences is something I value.
And that's, well, I'll just move into enjoying having adult
Yeah.
children. And just even last night when we were in his apartment, he's like, "Did you turn off all the lights? Did you,
Oh my gosh, he
even
was so
though,
dadding us.
even though his, stuff is being funded by people, he was still, because he wants to do other things with that money that he gets every month. So he is,
I
I mean, he
thanked
has a
him.
huge sign above his air conditioner, like that he put a piece of paper, turn off air.
Yeah, I texted him last night and said, hey, thanks for letting us hang out at your place. It was nice to have a place to just sit
Yeah.
there as opposed to you and me trying to burn time at a bar or a restaurant. And his text was, it was something along the lines of, no problem. Did you lock up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I locked up.
Yeah.
Of course, then it makes me worry. And so now I'm thinking, is that what we do to our kids? That even though they know they did something, when we ask them or nag them about something, then we put pressure on
But
them.
yeah,
So,
and it is fun. The day after Christmas we went to Puttery, which is an indoor golf place here. That's a bar and different levels. It was fun, and it's just fun now being with children that are adults, and you can do those kind of things
right,
with. You can have discussions about things that you can't when they're
right,
little children, and
right.
so that and as we talked about, I don't know what category this would be in, but it is weird that Tanner now brings a suitcase to come here.
He has moved out, and that is a peak. It's a pit, but it's really more of a peak in the sense that he no longer lives in this house. He is a visitor in this house. We joke that he stays in the hotel room because you had converted his room and painted it once he left. And knowing that he's got his own life away from the house when he comes back for Christmas, it was like he had traveled from Seattle or something, even though it was just up from Dallas. And there's something that is really valuable in seeing that, knowing that you've launched him.
And I did have to tell him, I've taken over your closet, so you're not going to have room if you need to hang
Oh, I didn't know
anything.
that part.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, so back to the stuff thing.
I
We're
had to
going to need to
move
talk
my
about the
spring.
Swedish death
No,
cleansing.
no. I already did that as I was moving the spring and summer clothes up to the closet, but
Oh, sweet.
no, we need a bigger closet.
No,
Anyways,
absolutely not.
well, the next house we have is going to have a better closet situation. So, anyways, so yeah, it is nice just having
Good luck with
adult
that.
children that, want to do things outside of just being a little kid.
Yeah, you're talking
it's
to them as
fun.
adults.
Yeah. We did enjoy that we were not traveling at all during the holidays and did not have any pressure to because everyone that we would be was gone
Yeah.
anyway. So,
And as much as I loved our Japan experience 2 years ago, as much as I enjoy Christmas in Austin and doing the things in Austin and all that, whew, so nice to just sit in your own home.
this was nice. Now, I don't mind the traveling to another destination because then I don't have to do anything. That I don't mind. The getting up, like I even thought about that on the 26th when I woke up. I was like, if we were having to get up right now and get in the car and drive to Austin, I would be not I would do it, but I would not be super happy about it. So I'm glad that we didn't even have that thought, pressure, nothing
Right.
this year. So, and your sister is coming here, so we will get to see them
And the fact
post.
that a peak of this year is that we prioritize going down to Austin at least once a month, and so that takes some of that holiday pressure
Yeah.
off.
So, some of our peaks also involved some pits, and so and this is where the pits and the pivots come into, one of the reasons we went to New York City, was spring break with Tegan, but you were also there
I
working.
was there working, which allowed us to make that trip happen, right? Be able to visit a client there. That, however, was the last client that I had and likely will have in that business, and that was a bit of a pit. Coming to that realization, well, the struggle of trying to find the next client in that customer experience consulting space, really trying to find that. That's though a pit that is really that lessons learned. And I think it's, if you don't get a lesson out of your pit, then it really is a pit. None of these come without a lesson. And that was during that time, the only revenue that I was getting was actually through the podcast, the CX Passport podcast. And brands and individuals were eager to sponsor episodes. There was an excitement about things. And it brought to mind the realization of, hey, I enjoy this. Oh, and people are willing to pay me for it, and I didn't really like what I was doing before. Let's pivot. And so while that absolutely is a pit, to think that was the last client, man, I will look back on that as actually an incredible peak.
And I could see it because you were already moving into that. I really love the podcasting, but you didn't have any time to focus on it
No.
because you were doing consulting work for a client. And so I think, you know, while it hurt at the time, yes, it did. And now we have, created this new venture that we're now doing together, which comes into, one of my pits that turned into a peak that turned in and it was, I was starting to feel dissatisfied with my work as well. And it has nothing to do with who I worked with, the people that I was around. It just got to be too routine and monotonous for me, and I just knew that it was time. And so, I did retire, which then allowed me to free up some time so that now we can really, we had already started focusing on this new business, but now coming in 2025, we know that is
Right.
our
Right. We had
focus.
the time to go to a conference for podcasters in January that we never would have considered going to in the earlier world. I think it's interesting that you said that you observed in me that I wasn't able, that I was interested in the podcasting, but wasn't able to do it because of the other stuff. And I kind of knew it, but it shows that how your spouse can know more about you than you know yourself. It was very apparent to me with the words you said, with the way that you felt, the way that you expressed yourself, that you were getting tired of the work that you were doing. And thankfully, we were never in a situation that you were required to work. There was always that flexibility. It was something that was part of your identity. It was something that you enjoyed. Well, as that enjoyment started to wane and as you started to explore other elements of your identity and your expression, well, it was clear that it was time. And
Yeah.
I think it became clear to my eyes before it became clear to yours. And that's so good about a spouse relationship.
I think things got sped up a little bit. I didn't know what my timeline was.
Right.
And then I think things got sped up a little bit. And, going back to your point of we're going to this podcasting thing in January, that goes along with the saying yes.
Right.
I felt like a lot of the times I couldn't say yes. Again, not by anyone else, but by
Your own
me,
pressure. Yeah, this is all about you.
because
Yeah.
I didn't want to let my people that came to my classes down. I didn't want to let Ashley down. And so I had already started, we had already started, and especially me. This was a harder thing for me than it was for you, but to say yes more to, hey, like even yesterday as we were talking about, I wasn't sure if I was going to go with you down to Dallas. I'm so glad I did because I loved the pub we went to. It was listening, getting to hear the girls and all their excitement
Yeah.
coming home. So, I think I have done a good job with that last year, and I, plan on continuing that and increasing it. But now I have so much more flexibility
Yeah.
that I feel like I can say yes. Yes, let's go, and let's add an extra day so we get there earlier.
Right.
So it's just, yeah, those are nice things. I'm just, going along with that. This was a pit, our first big
Oh gosh, yeah.
event that we did have planned, and we talked about it already on the podcast.
It was supposed to launch the
Yeah.
business effectively. It
Yeah.
was the CX Pass, not the CX Passport Live was to be launched in reality in October in Orlando, doing the live podcasting at events for B2B SaaS companies. We were going to build relationships, we were going to pass out cards, meet people, see how others did it, and then the hurricane hit.
Yeah.
And we're not going to, like you said, we already did it. The tragedy is the folks that were impacted there by the hurricane, not us. But it absolutely disrupted, and I'll say just straight up derailed. Like I was somewhat adrift when it came to the business because all the energy was going to that. That was an absolute pit. The activities that I did during that pit kind of kept me going. They weren't really the pivot that needed to happen. And I think that's what it's sort of the realization here in December. I'm out of the activities. It's time to do what we need to do to grow the business. And that's what we're doing in 25.
And we did, because we were home, Tanner came out and watched the Cowboys get, so some things that wouldn't have happened
Yeah.
did happen. I'm not trying to Pollyanna because it was not great, but
I went camping. I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
I never got I haven't been able to go camping. So there's ways to use it, and it's not just. I like it you said, Pollyanna. We're going to have a lesson learned out of each of these pit, and it's easy now with the passage of time to look back and see that there was that. In the moment, it sucked.
Oh yeah, it was totally yes. So, but I don't want to go too far into that because there's an episode out there all about that. So, you mentioned the Cowboys sucking this season, which I actually wrote, and I said, yeah, but that's pivoted into we don't have to be in front of the TV we've actually done some things, and I'm like, oh, the Cowboys game's on. You're like, I don't care. Now, the last couple of weeks, they've actually looked better, but they're donezo
That is
for
funny. Yeah,
playoffs.
no,
So,
that has been an absolute pit. As much as I can't stand the owner, they'll always be the team that I root for, and so
oh.
I need them to do well.
So we kind of went through, and you, our biggest pit this
Oh,
year.
and if you're a listener, if you know me, if you know us, you know what the biggest one is, and that's my mom passed away in May, and I'm still dealing with it like everyone would with that. But it for it to have happened, it was something that was okay. So I won't go into great detail. You can tell that I'm trying to form my thoughts here, right here, real time. We talked ad nauseum about it already because she suffered from Alzheimer's. It was not a shock. It still is a pit when it happens, and for it to happen during his
When
graduation
we were
week.
at the peak,
And
and
I mean,
yeah,
we knew going into it when we flew out there that things were winding down, but for him to have
we
graduated,
did.
yeah,
No,
yeah, we
no, you
saw
we got a
some.
call when we got out there that hospice had brought in. I didn't know any.
Well, no,
Oh,
we had been
oh,
talking about that
I
she
had,
was
okay, the
declining.
things
We
that
were,
I had
yeah,
noticed.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was an inkling, but not necessarily that it was going to be that week. And so I guess peak is it wasn't before, thank God. But he had one of the celebration, and then the next day she passes, and then we have other celebrations to do. And being able to make sure that you can just almost separate your personalities and to celebrate personality and grieve personality, it was a pit. That was well, duh.
Yeah.
Oh,
And, when you brought up that, thank goodness it didn't happen before, it seemed like every big event, Tegan's graduation, moving them into college, moving them back into, we were always like, please don't, please make it through this next
right.
thing, and so for it to happen, and there was nothing we could do, and there was nothing to be done at that point, just trying to get logistics stuff together. Yeah, but for it to just happen during that,
Yeah.
week of great celebration.
When I look back on it, I think we actually did a really good job of still celebrating. What did we talk about earlier?
Yeah.
That we had a great week, and I think that's a lesson that works for us. There is in that moment, in that grief, in that time, whatever the downfall is, we focused on something positive, and I think that helped carry us through in that moment
And
too.
I think, and if you want to cut this out, you can. But I think you were masking a lot of emotions, and you were almost trying to over, no, 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 I'm good, I'm good, let's celebrate, and I'm sure, that's very common for anyone when, hopefully not very many people have been through a death at a time that is supposed to be high celebration. But I think there was some overcompensation, which it was fine, but I was just aware of, okay, we need to leave and you need to go home and just decompress by yourself for a little bit. And that's why you have a spouse that is in tune with your emotions. But yes, we knew again there was nothing that we could be doing if we were in Austin at that point. So that helped too, that, we could continue on with
The
doing all the things that we
the only
needed to
challenge I
do.
have to the phrase what you said there is one, I can't know whether you were right or wrong to pull out of scenarios or anything like that. But the masking, I don't masking sounds more like hiding. I don't think I was actually masking. I was making sure that my grief didn't carry into others'
Okay,
celebrations.
I
If
used the wrong word. That's when the overcompensating, I think,
perhaps,
is what,
yeah,
but, and again, that's just, that's when it's nice that you have a partner that can recognize those things to protect you, everyone else, those kind of, you know, things. So, but yes, that was definitely a pit and going through. I think it was probably good that we were here for Christmas. Thanksgiving, was a little tougher, I think, than you were expecting it to be
it's
at
just
at
weird to
certain
recognize that I
points.
didn't have both parents, and we
Yeah,
talked about that in an
yeah.
earlier episode.
So I think it was good that we
Yeah,
just didn't even have to be
yeah.
in familiar surroundings there. But
You know, relate in this vein though, it is amazing how much we are still dealing with the estate, and so this pit.
The pit has grown.
Well,
It's closing up. The pit is
yeah,
starting to close up.
the lessons learned is just again, I don't know what I don't actually think there could have been that much done differently. To tell you the truth,
Yeah.
it just it's just a lot of work, and
Yeah.
I think that's the realization of that, and just a tripling down on you me doing the things like I referenced the Swedish death cleanse. You know, we've got to make sure we are on top of that every year, every time we're just thinking about cleaning out and making sure that our kids aren't burdened with the things that we see in this house.
Yes. Well, I told you I was listening to a podcast this week and they were talking about bad Christmas gifts that you got. And someone said, yeah, my sister gave my dad this book. He opened it. It was called I'm Dead, Now What? So,
Oh no! All right.
and it is on Amazon, and it's basically a workbook for your parents who are older or anyone who is older to go through and put this is where things are. This is passwords. This is how I'd like my service to be. So there's, but he said that was just kind of a, okay.
Maybe keep that one out of the holiday
Yeah,
period. Just hey,
right.
Dad, I want you to look at this.
But, that again is something that we talked about just and hopefully prompted some of you to,
Yeah.
ask these questions of parents, each other, whatever. But, we talked about it was a great pit, lots of emotions, but out of it has come some very good peaks and pivots.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say this, right? She's not suffering anymore,
No, yes,
right? So that's a huge pit for those of us left behind, but for her, she's in paradise.
that. And as we talked about, it's harder sometimes. It's harder, that disease, especially. Yes, the person going through it, as long as they're not in pain, they don't know what's going
Correct.
on.
It's the
The
ones that don't have. Yeah.
family, it's just horrible. So that
I mean,
in itself is a peak that we don't have to see your mom like that
right.
anymore.
And other things. Jerry got to spend Christmas with his side of the family for the first time in years. That's something he wasn't able to experience, and now he was able to experience that. And no one ever roots for death, but you can look back and go, okay, well, here's the good things that came out of it.
It has given us, opportunities that for 2025 that we will be able to really start doing some of the things that we have set out in our future plans to do.
Yeah.
So it's, hopefully if you've had, everyone has had pits this year. I mean, again, like I said, if you haven't, then I don't know, you either sold your soul to the devil or you're sitting on the hand of Jesus. I don't know which, but
Wait a second. Where did a phrase like that come from?
I don't know. I just made that up.
Boy, that sounds like you are coming out of some straight deep South gospel, sitting on the hand of Jesus. Hallelujah.
So I'm hoping that everyone can figure out once you look back on things, and it takes time, but finding the pits, but finding the pivots that have come out of those
Yeah.
pits.
And celebrating the peaks that have been a part of it. That is what 24 has. It is. Everybody says this every year. I feel this more strongly about this year than I have perhaps in any year, maybe even all the way back to 03 or other. I mean, there's other years that might fit this, but 24 had more packed into it than I think any year that I can recall.
Yeah.
From a peak, from a pit, from a pivot, from a man, I didn't think the empty nest would be so full.
There were a lot of transitions for our children, for us,
Yeah.
for, adding in things that we didn't expect to be added in there. So this year, like you said, has been it's been full. And
it's nice to be able to say that, not looking back in exasperation, but in primarily celebration with the pits, of course, but looking back, it has been a good year with things that have been rough, but that have found their ways into something good.
I think I'm going to coin the phrase, I'm changing it though, not stay alive. How about feeling alive in
Okay,
25?
feeling
Let's
alive in 25. Okay.
There you go. We'll see how that
We'll
goes.
talk to our trademark attorney.
Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed our year recap. Pits, peaks, pits, and pivots. That's really hard to
That
say.
is, and I'd
So,
encourage you to do it yourselves. And
yeah.
honestly, let us know what your peaks, pits, and or pivots were this year, and we'd be happy to talk about those or not talk about them. But let us know. Build a community with us. We'd like to hear from you. You can always hit us up at theloudquietpod@gmail.com. And you can also leave comments on the Spotify feed or comments on the YouTube channel. We'll see all of those.
Yep. All right. There you go. We're back in the studio. I've got my headphones on, so it's been
You
another.
can wear
I
headphones.
know it's been another episode of The Loud Quiet,
Living
Living
the
the
Empty
Empty
Nest.
Nest.